Iran is threatening the United States of America that they will respond immediately on American soil. So is Iran building a new underground nuclear facility in the Karaj area? Right now, it appears that the Iranians are rebuilding a massive number of missiles at a record speed. Iran is threatening the United States, saying that you must surrender in order to receive the peace plan. And the Revolutionary Guards are on the edge of the abyss. The plan to bring the Ayatollah regime to its knees is becoming clear. A $10 million reward on their heads. The United States is hunting the top leadership of the Revolutionary Guards. All the details coming up ahead. So Trump is quoting Muhammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the Speaker of the Iranian parliament, who said, "We are hungry. We cannot survive." The United States is threatening countries that trade with Iran and with the Revolutionary Guards and are threatening to renew the fire in the Gulf. That's what the Revolutionary Guards are threatening in response. So the harsh sanctions on Iran are hitting Erdogan's Turkey directly. Turkey could lose everything because of the serious mistake. Pakistan announced that significant progress has been made in the talks with Iran. And while Trump wants to cut Iran off from the world, the real test is waiting in Beijing. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu revealed that Iran tried to assassinate one of his sons. So what card is Tehran pulling against Donald Trump's new sanctions? And of course, we will examine the nightmare scenario that has the IDF and the United States on high alert. And here it is. Days before the war in Iran broke out, Trump was warned that eliminating Khamenei would not necessarily bring down the regime. I'm Yair Pinto, joined by Ashlea Alex, and we are here on Boots on the Ground, bringing you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel and the truth about what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. So today is August 25th. So let's begin. The administration of President Donald Trump is intensifying the economic campaign against Iran and expanding the threat to those who help Tehran continue doing business around the world. The new message from Washington is clear. It's not only Iranian actors that are in the crosshairs. Countries, financial institutions, and companies that continue trading with Tehran may find themselves exposed to American sanctions. U.S. Treasury Scott Bessent presented the move as a press conference, and he announced that the start of an economic attack aimed at international financial networks used by Iran is on its way. The administration gave the move the name Economic Judgment Day. But in the first stage, Washington avoided imposing sweeping punishment on all of Iran's trading partners and gave them a certain amount of time to reassess their ties with the Islamic Republic. The American chokehold is meant to collapse the Iranian economy, create anger in the streets, and destabilize the regime. Negotiations around the war in the Middle East continue to deteriorate in the harsher tones that we're seeing. So at the same time, the United States is increasing the pressure on the leadership of the Revolutionary Guards, and the State Department's rewards for justice programs published an offer of up to $10 million for information on senior figures in the Revolutionary Guards and the organization's branches. The United States is looking for information on key leaders in the Revolutionary Guards and its different arms. The Americans say that these figures command and direct different parts of the Revolutionary Guard systems, including command, drones, cyber, and intelligence. But in Tehran, officials are trying to project business as usual. Iranian officials dismissed the American announcement of additional economic sanctions against their country, as well as the threat of even harsher steps. In response to the American announcement, Iran's economy minister, Ali Madinzadeh, claimed that his country has prepared measures to deal with this pressure, and that American sanctions will fail in their attempts to cut off the arteries of the economy, just as they failed in the past. So according to him, Even though the war had effects on steel plants and on the economy, the country has risen again and is defending itself. This is while Washington cannot achieve its goals through economic pressure. But while Tehran dismisses the threats publicly, troubling movements are being exposed below the surface. Satellite images revealed that Iran is building a new underground facility in the Karaj island, which is the secret site which began construction last May. And it is not reconstruction of infrastructure that was damaged in the war, but the construction of new underground infrastructure in an area where the missile arm of the Revolutionary Guards operates. The central question around the new Karaj site is not only what Iran is building there now, but what it plans to hide inside it, in the background. It appears that the Iranians are rapidly rebuilding a massive numbers of missiles. This is one of the reasons that Israel and the United States are closely watching every movement, every new site, and every sign that Tehran is trying to restore capabilities that were damaged. A political storm erupted in Iran this week following a series of sharp statements by Mohsen Razai, the new secretary of the Supreme National Security Council and the representative of leader Mujtaba Khamenei on the council. Razai threatened that Iran may completely stop its oil exports, warned countries cooperating with the United States, and even publicly raised a hint that was interpreted as the possibility that Iran could reconsider its traditional position on nuclear weapons. His statements triggered a debate inside Iran, not only about what he said, but also about a more basic question. Is Razai presenting Iran's security policy, the position of the supreme leader, or only his personal opinion? Let me know what you think about this in the comments. We will get into that in depth. And amidst all of this, Turkey could become one of the main victims of the new sanctions policy. The United States is threatening every country that continues trading with Iran, and Erdogan's Turkey is exactly at that pressure point. It depends on energy, Iranian energy, and it maintains trade with Iran, with Tehran, and in the past, severed as a major route for bypassing sanctions on Iran. That's Turkey. Now, Erdogan will have to choose, continue bidding on the relationship with Tehran, continue the trade agreements, or preserve access to the global financial systems based on the dollar of the United States. And while Donald Trump wants to cut Iran off from the world, the real test is still waiting in Beijing. China is one of the most important players in an attempt to bypass sanctions, and if Washington decides to go all the way against those who continue trading with Tehran, Beijing too will have to recalculate the cost. And at the same time, Pakistan announced that significant progress has been made in talks with Iran. According to reports, mediation efforts continue, but as long as Washington intensifies the economic pressure, it is hard to see Tehran returning to the negotiating table without first trying to gain a new card of strength. And this is where the nightmare scenario comes in, the one that has the IDF and the United States on high alert. Iran is rebuilding missiles, constructing underground infrastructure, threatening American interests, and at the same time, trying to project that it can still control the pace of escalation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu revealed that Iran tried to assassinate one of his sons. That revelation comes after a wave of personal Iranian threats against President Trump, his family, all the family members, and other senior Western officials. So Tehran's message is clear. If the economic pressure continues, Iran will try to make the campaign more personal, more psychological, and more threatening. And here is another important point. Days before the war in Iran broke out, Trump was warned that eliminating Khamenei, the supreme leader, would not necessarily bring down the regime. In other words, Washington also understood that the question is not only who stands at the top of the pyramid, but whether the regime's power and the mechanisms can be dismantled. The Revolutionary Guards, the security services, the black economy, and the proxy network, all of them need to be removed. And from here to Lebanon, efforts to arrange the disarmament of the Hezbollah terrorist organization in southern Lebanon continue. But according to the Lebanese sources, it has still not been decided which body will verify the process. Italy is currently the leading option for this role. The sources warn that as long as no agreed mechanism is established to verify the disarmament, it will not be possible to expand the pilot areas within the proposed process of the IDF's withdrawal. In practice, this means that the deadlock around implementing the arrangement in southern Lebanon continues. And meanwhile, Lebanese army commander Rudolf Haikal is in Rome and is expected to hold a series of meetings on this issue. At the center of the discussions will be the verification of mechanisms, like who will operate them, how will it work, and how the international force assigned to this mission will function. In addition, the sides are expected to discuss the size of the international force, its composition, and the operational procedures that will guide it. So at the same time, discussions are expected regarding the future of UNIFIL in southern Lebanon, whose current mandate is set to expire at the end of the year. We will get into all of these details, and there is a lot ahead of us, so let's begin. I'm Yair Pinto, joined by Ashlea Alex, and we're here on Boots on the Ground. We are bringing you the whole truth about what's happening here in Israel and about this war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. But before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button, and most importantly, don't forget to look for me, Yair Pinto, and for Mati Shoshani on our social media accounts to get our first-hand perspective on what it's like to live in Israel under this war. So I had to jump into this area to show you the Temple Mount, the Mountain of Olives, and introduce you to an amazing product. Imagine holding in your hands soil from the Temple Mount, the place where Solomon built the first temple and where Jesus walked and taught. So in 1999, tons of soil were removed from the Temple Mount and desecrated. Since then, the Temple Mount Sifting Project has carefully examined this soil, uncovering remarkable traces from artifacts from thousands of years of biblical history. And now, you have the opportunity to own a small portion of this historic soil in your hands. Let me show you another product that they have. Okay, so this thing is certified by two of the archaeologists who led this rescue mission. So this is more than just soil from Jerusalem. It's a connection. Of course, it's a gift to family, to friends, but it's a symbol of standing with the Jewish people of Israel, of declaring that the history of the Bible is true and has a legacy of faith to our children. So this is the only soil ever to leave the Temple Mount. So you can hold a tangible piece of biblical history in your hands and help support the preservation of the Temple Mount's extraordinary past and future. So you can do that. Get a piece of the Temple Mount soil. You can give it as a souvenir, a gift to anybody that likes Israel by going to templemountsoil.com. Again, that's templemountsoil.com, and use the coupon code TBN1 for 10% off of your purchase. Okay? templemountsoil.com, and use the code TBN1. Satellite imagery near Karaj shows fresh excavations, new access roads, and possible tunnel entrances that are appearing since around May 21st. A higher resolution image from August 14th strengthened the assessment that the site may be intended for production. There's still no public proof that this is a ballistic missile factory, a nuclear factory, or even a confirmed Revolutionary Guards installation. What is clear is that this is new construction, not simply the repair of a site already hit in this war. Karaj sits inside a strategic belt that includes missile infrastructure and centrifuge-related facilities. The new excavation is roughly 23 kilometers from the Tessa Taba complex, but proximity does not prove a nuclear connection. Then, on August 22nd, Iran showed Major General Ali Abdullahi touring a separate underground missile production facility. Tehran did not reveal its location, and there is no evidence that it was Karaj. The pattern is what matters. Iran is learning from this air campaign and pushing more sensitive capacity below the ground. And before we continue, I want to call on you to help us share the truth from Israel. You can like this report, share it, subscribe to TBN Israel so that you never miss another boots on the ground update. We're reporting twice a day from Israel about what's happening. And what you see on YouTube is only part of the story. And you can get closer, first-hand reports, behind-the-scene moments, and also stories of faith, resilience, and hope from Israel by going to tbn.org/journeys/boots. That's tbn.org/journeys/boots. And you can also text the word boots to 316-316 from North America to receive direct updates from TBN Israel. So when I or Ashley or Mate report from Israel, you are seeing these events through the eyes of people who actually live here, grew up here, fought in the IDF, and are knowing and understanding what's going on. So let's get back to the news, because Washington is now trying to penetrate the people who build, protect, and command the underground system. Ashley, over to you.
It is, and there is an important detail that has been lost in some of the headlines. The official rewards for justice offer is up to $10 million for information on key leaders of the Revolutionary Guards and its branches. The latest public attention has focused on 5 operational figures tied directly to command, drones, cyber operations, and intelligence. They include Ahmad Vahidi, the commander of the Revolutionary Guards, Ali Abdullahi, Saeed Akajani, who commands the Guards UAV force, Hamidreza Lashkarian, responsible for cyber and electric command, and Majid Kademi, the intelligence chief. The American page asks people to provide documents, photographs, and videos that can support the information they submit. And one name on that list deserves special attention today. Ali Abdullahi is the same senior Iranian commander who appeared in state media on August 22nd, touring an underground missile production facility alongside the acting defense minister. Again, there is no evidence that this was the new Karaj complex, but the timing is revealing. Iran is publicly displaying underground missile production, while Washington is offering millions of dollars for information on the men who oversee the military system around it. That is a different kind of intelligence war. Satellite images can show a road entering a mountain. They cannot automatically tell you what is behind the door, what is being assembled inside, how quickly production can begin, or which commander signs the orders. That's why the American campaign is not only about finding targets, it's also about finding people who know how the system works. And this pressure campaign is arriving as the Iranian leadership is having a remarkably public argument about whether the country can continue absorbing the cost of the war. President Trump helped turn that argument into a political spectacle. He reposted a headline claiming that Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Khalibaf had said, "We are hungry, we cannot survive." That was not an accurate quotation. What Khalibaf actually said was conditional, and in some ways more important. He argued that no amount of military power can preserve the state if the population is hungry and the country lacks financial circulation, economic growth, and domestic production. That is not the same as declaring that Iran has already collapsed. It's a senior former Revolutionary Guards commander telling Iran's political and business elite that missiles alone cannot keep a state functioning. Khalibaf then hit back at Trump with the phrase, "Make America hungry again," accusing Washington of using a false version of his remarks. The social media exchange is political theater. The economic numbers underneath it are not. Iran's annual inflation reached about 66% in July. Food prices were roughly 128% higher than the year earlier. The rial has traded around 2.02 million to the US dollar on the open market. And there's another number that matters even more to the regime. Chinese imports of Iranian oil have fallen sharply. Current estimates put August flows at roughly 534,000 barrels per day, compared with an average of about 1.4 million barrels per day in 2025. China is still Iran's most important oil customer, but Beijing does not need Iran nearly as much as Iran needs access to Chinese buyers. That imbalance is exactly what Washington is trying to exploit. The Trump administration is also trying to close the older financial routes Tehran used when direct banking became difficult. Turkey is a useful example. US prosecutors previously alleged that roughly $20 billion moved through a sanctions evasion mechanism involving Iranian oil and gas revenue, gold, cash, exchange companies, and transactions presented as humanitarian trade. That history matters now because the current American strategy is designed to make banks and trading companies fear the secondary cost of helping Iran more than they value the business itself. But a newly reported account of the debate inside the White House before this shows why Washington has shifted so much attention toward economics. Days before the war began on February 28th, President Trump received warnings from senior American intelligence and military officials about what a large attack on Iran could trigger. Then Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard warned that killing Iran's supreme leader could produce an even more radical successor who would be more determined to obtain a nuclear weapon. She also warned that Iran could move quickly against the Strait of Hormuz, destabilize global energy markets, and attack American forces and US partners across the Middle East. Senior military commanders raised a separate problem. They warned about casualties, pressure on ammunition stockpiles, and the difficulty of sustaining another major war with forces already stretched across several theaters. Trump went ahead. Ali Khamenei was killed. His son, Mujtaba, took power. The regime did not fall. Iran then used Hormuz as a weapon. American bases and personnel were hit, and the military campaign became longer and more expensive than the quick war scenario many supporters had expected. 18 American service members have been killed in war-related operations, and the Pentagon says 756 more were wounded. Those numbers do not mean the military campaign failed. Iran suffered heavy damage to senior command structures, military infrastructure, air defenses, missile assets, and nuclear infrastructure. But they help explain why the administration is now trying to convert military damage into political pressure without immediately launching another enormous bombing campaign. There's another revealing detail from those pre-war discussions. American intelligence officials reportedly separated the proposed strategy into 4 stages: decapitating the Iranian leadership, crippling Iran's ability to project military power, triggering a popular uprising, and finally replacing the regime. They assessed that American and Israeli military power could accomplish much of the first 2 stages. The real disagreement was over stages 3 and 4. Bombs can destroy a command center. Intelligence can locate missile batteries. Neither automatically creates a viable opposition movement capable of taking control of a country of nearly 90 million people. Now, that distinction helps explain the war 6 months later. The military could destroy capabilities. It could not manufacture the political outcome. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is still leaving kinetic strikes on the table. The difference is that Washington now wants economic pressure, intelligence penetration, and the threat of force working at the same time. That is also why Kalibaf's real statement matters more than the distorted headline. He is effectively warning his own system that national power has a civilian foundation. If salaries fail, food becomes unaffordable, factories stop producing, and oil revenue keeps shrinking, the military cannot compensate forever. And now that argument is colliding with a very different voice inside Tehran. Mohsen Rezai, the new secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, has threatened to treat any country supporting the American economic campaign as participating in an act of war. He has warned that Iran could stop oil exports not only through Hormuz, but also across the Persian Gulf. That is already dangerous, but Rezai has now gone further. In an interview on Iranian state television, he argued that the war demonstrated a weakness in the global nuclear system. In his argument, membership in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and cooperation with international inspectors did not prevent Iran from being attacked. He then raised the question openly. If that system cannot protect a country, why should it seek a nuclear weapon as a deterrent? Rezai even argued that a nuclear weapon could be cheaper and more effective than maintaining hundreds of F-35s and spending enormous sums on other conventional capabilities. He did not announce that Iran has decided to build a bomb. That point is essential. But one of Iran's most senior security officials has now made the nuclear deterrence argument publicly and that has triggered a fight inside the Iranian political system over who has the authority to speak for the state. Reformist figures have argued that Rezai is the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council and not the president, and cannot simply announce policy on his own. Hardliners answers that this is not an ordinary secretary. Rezai also serves as a supreme leader's representative on the council, giving his words much greater political weight. President Masoud Pezeshkian is pulling in another direction. He said it would be better to end the war while Iran can still claim a position of power and dignity. Kalibaf is warning about hunger and economic survival. Rezai is threatening regional oil exports and openly discussing the logic of nuclear weapons. That does not prove the Iranian leadership is breaking apart. It does show that the argument is no longer hidden, and that creates a serious problem for diplomacy. When a mediator carries a proposal into Tehran, which voice is actually authorized to say yes? Pakistan is now testing that question. Field Marshal Asim Munir and Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi have just completed meetings in Tehran with Pezeshkian, Kalibaf, and Rezai. Munir spoke with President Trump before the visit. According to Pakistan, the discussions focused on preventing another escalation, reopening the Strait of Hormuz, restoring the Islamabad Memorandum, and finding a faster path toward ending the conflict. Pakistan's Interior Minister says significant progress was made. That's encouraging, but there is still no public agreement and no clear Iranian concession on the central disputes. Pakistan is not the only diplomatic channel still moving. Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busadi is expected in Tehran for another round of contacts focused on Hormuz. What makes the Pakistani mediation particularly interesting is the list of people Munir met. He did not speak only to the president. He also met the parliament speaker and the security chief, whose messages are pulling in different directions. And that suggests Islamabad understands the real challenge. Reaching an agreement with Iran may require more than persuading one office in Tehran. And the same contradiction runs through the entire war. Iran is digging new underground infrastructure, while some of its political leaders say the economy cannot survive an endless confrontation. Washington is offering millions for information on Revolutionary Guard commanders while leaving the door open to diplomacy. Trump is trying to isolate the regime economically, while Pakistan and Oman are trying to preserve routes back to negotiations. The decisive question is whether pressure produces compromise or convinces Tehran that it needs one more escalation before it can negotiate. Yair, that brings us back to the mountain near Karaj, because whatever Iran decides politically, its engineers are already preparing for the possibility that this war is not over.
Thanks, Ashley. That brings us back to the military problem. A hardened underground complex is harder to map, harder to assess, and harder to finish. Blocking a tunnel entrance is not the same as destroying productions deep inside the mountain. Pressure is also appearing inside Iran's regional network. In Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, Shiite clans are reportedly discussing a joint framework supporting state control of weapons and then moving their community away from Hezbollah's permanent confrontation with other Lebanese and also Arab actors. The new tunnels near Karaj, they show that Iran is preparing for a longer contest, even while its leaders argue over how much pressure the state can absorb. And if Washington and Israel identify the purpose of that facility before it becomes operational, will they wait for diplomacy or treat the mountain itself as the next target? Let me know what you think about this in the comments. And keep spreading the truth. Follow us, and most importantly, do not forget to hit that subscribe button so that you stay tuned to what's happening in Israel in real time and never miss another boots on the ground update. Keep looking for us on our social media accounts. I'm Yair Pinto. With me is also Mati Shoshani. You can see all the social media accounts down below. Check our lives out. We are less formal on the social media accounts, so hope you like it. And unite in prayer. Pray for wisdom to our leaders. Pray for our servicemen and women that are protecting all of us. Pray for our team, for everybody who's working very hard to make sure that you get the most up-to-date information and know how to pray for the situation. And keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. So we'll see you again tomorrow for more updates from Israel.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.